everybody, welcome once again to my YouTube channel, and today let's go for another round of the WCR Tier 3 F1 2019 Championship of the calendar. Takes us today to a track that after a long absence debuted last real-life F1 season, and since then, at least in the sim racing side of things, has provided some exciting races. The Circuit Ricard, 15 corners, 5.8 kilometers each lap is going to be repeated 27 laps in race pace this afternoon. Of course, we're going to have plenty of action within the first corner. Turn number 7 as well is going to be a popular overtaking zone as it gets after a DRS zone. Looking at our standings, we have Venice losing the championship with 76 points, 21 ahead of Rat Hydroden in P3, the best of McLaren, followed by Slash, then Value, followed by Nuke, then Arza, Tyser, Brad Pitt, Benda completes the top 10. After that, we have Toro Rosso of Delta with Mr. Mouse in 12th, Biff in 13th, followed by Ari, Colin, Elemental, ALG 14, then Michael, Slime, and Black plays without any points scored so far. Unfortunately for him, sits in last place of the grid. So we're going to get started with our qualifying session for our French Grand Prix, and we have already a few drivers on their outlaps. So going to take a look at some of them. Elemental looks like he's the one driver to get released out of the pits the sooner, so we are going to take a look at him. Of course, those of you who usually watch these broadcasts, by the way, let me just minimize OBS on my second monitor. And yeah, for those of you who usually watch, these are probably non-familiar names, because of course I don't usually broadcast this tier, but this is the one that I'm going to be broadcasting from now on. I used to commentate on tier number 2, but there was a merge between the guys in the first tier and second tier due to low attendance. So of course, those tier 2 became tier 1, and I'm commentating on tier 3 for the time being. For the moment, we have Elemental, the Alfa Romeo driver, has only scored points with a 5th place at Azerbaijan and a 6th place at Spain. Let's see what he does today. Needs to get a smooth exit out of turn 15 as we're going on board to follow his flying lap. He was currently on the hard tires. Up to the gears, mode number 5 of ERS. It's about 60 meters away from turn number 1. You go hard on the brakes. Difficult to spot the braking zone into turn number 1. Is away from turn number 2 as well. A bit off cambered, which makes it harder for you to maintain within the track limits. Then the chicane of turns 3 and 4 into the slow section of turn 5. Now a slight lift of the throttle before going back on the power smoothly on the slightly uphill turn 6 and 7 complex. Now it's pedal to the metal, mode number 4 of ERS. The ERS wide open at the back of his Alfa Romeo, and now it just waits patiently to spot the 100 meter marker board on the right side of the track. Hard on the brakes once again, down to third gear to turns number 8 and 9, and away he goes. Needs to be smooth on the power once again as he once again goes up through the gears. Mode number 4 of ERS, extracting maximum power from the hybrid Ferrari power unit on the back of his car. And now once again, turn number 11, very tricky braking spot, or braking zone to spot. Nonetheless, he keeps his car composed, keeps it balanced as he gets himself a bit wide to turn number 12. That's bound to cost him at least 1/10. It gets up to the gears once again. Another tricky braking zone into turn 14. A wide entry. Got to tighten the exits to get himself a better angle of approach to the last corner. Want to carry the maximum speeds through the apex. He's going to get himself crossed over the line, and he does a 1:33.0. There are a few drivers as well behind him on flying laps. Hydroden completes his lap but gets nullified. Slash on the mediums gets new provisory pole to 1:32.4. I'm going to take a look at Colin, who's quite far behind. We have Delta in the other Toro Rosso getting a 1:32.7. LOR Keyboard Magnussen got himself a 1:33.8 on softs. ALG 14 with the 1:33.4 in 5th place. Tyson with his Ferrari also on the yards gets a 1:33.444, guarantees him 4th place so far. Going to get back to X-Nuke, who's going to cross over the line on the hards. P7 with a 1:35.3. The lap didn't go accordingly to plan for him. no doubt. We are going to get the Brett, who's going to get himself started with his flying lap, so we're going to check up on him later on. We have Hydrodan close to the end of his lap. We also have Colin getting to the last corners of his flying lap, currently navigating turns 14 and 15. Let's see what the Toro Rosso driver does. He's on the softs as Venez on the hards gets a 132.3. Colin beats him by over 1 second, 130.7. Of course, big difference between the softs and the hards. Nonetheless, Colin getting a very, very good lap. Venez is going to have to stick with it in P2 for the time being. Going to take a look at Mr. Mouse, who's currently coming into the chicane of turns 8 and 9. Hydrodan is about to cross the line. He's going to get a lap time of 9th place with a 1:33.499. Very close to ALG14's lap time as well. Going to check on Brat. Is getting to the last few corners as well. Valu is getting to the last complex of corners. BFFC has just started his lap pretty soon, so it's going to be a while until he finishes that one. In the meantime, Valu, I'm not sure if he nullified his lap, because he's still, yeah, he nullified his lap. He's going to have another go at it. Maybe he got something wrong with him with his lap. Maybe he nullified his lap at some point and he's going to try again. The Brat is going to take his Ferrari on the hard tires as well. Let's see what the number 21 does. Gets himself P2. Beats Venez. Very good lap from him, considering it is the hard tires. These guys are using a 132.1. Mr. Mouse gets himself P5 with a 132.6. Let's take a look at Beefs. We are going to see what he does, getting himself crossing over the line. He's already derating nonetheless. P7 for the Racing Point driver, as gets a 132.9. Going to take a look at Valu, who is on a flying lap of his own at the moment. The McLaren driver, the Finn, who's occupying 5th place currently in the championship, didn't have the greatest start of the season with the DNF at Albert Park. Then he got 4th place at Bahrain, 5th at China, 4th at Azerbaijan, 9th at Spain, got back to the top 5 finishes with the 5th place at Monaco and the 10th place at Canada. So 2 out of the last 3 places, or races rather, haven't been according to plan, so he's had a bit of a drop in form. Hopefully he could get back to the top 5 finishes here today. Let's see how he does. He's going to start with hopefully setting a good lap in this qualifying session. He's getting himself through the last couple corners. Let's see how he manages turn number 15. He does manage it well. He's starting to derate though, so he's not going to take advantage of the full horsepower of the RE power unit. Nonetheless, 8th place for the Finn with a 132.8 on a set of the hard tires. We have a few drivers who are back out for outlaps, as it is the case of Delta and Keyboard Magnussen. So actually Delta and Keyboard Magnussen aren't too far away from each other, so we're going to take a look at them. Delta, the German driver, got himself a good start to the season, a 5th place at Albert Park, and then his first and only podium of the season with a P3 at Bahrain, but since then he hasn't scored any points. 11th place at China, 11th place at Azerbaijan, a DNF at Spain, didn't show up for Monaco, and 11th place at Canada. So really a bit of a shame for the German drivers season so far. So hopefully he could get back to his previous form. He's doing P7 at the moment, so let's see how that one goes for him, as he's about to start his flying lap on a brand new set of soft tires. Keyboard Magnussen follows him. We also have Rat in P11. On the outlap we have Venez and Colin as well. So we're going to take a look at Keyboard Magnussen as well, as he's currently not too far behind the Toro Rosso. And we're going to take a look at the record of the Renault driver. I'm trying to find it on the standings, and I actually don't see the Renaults. Where the hell is he? I'm actually blind. I only see one Renault, and it is Michael, but it looks like Michael isn't racing here today. But I actually cannot find the other Renault. That is interesting. That, oh no, I found him. But maybe it's oh yeah, Keyboard Magnuson is Arza, so he changed his name apparently. He's currently in 7th in the standings at the moment. Going to jump back to Delta, who's about to finish his lap. Keyboard Magnuson is on a set of hearts, so let's see if he can breach the top 10 on that. Let's see what Delta does, get himself through the last couple corners. But Arza is on a good form. He got a P3 at Canada, his only podium so far. And Delta gets P2 with a 132.0. Keyboard Magnuson gets P11. Vanez is on an outlap at the moment, so still has to complete that one. Algie and Mr. Mouse are just going for practice laps, it looks like. We have Hydrodan, who just started his flying lap. We have Colin, the other Toro Rosso, on a set of mediums. He's going for... Ooh, there's a mistake from Colin as he comes out of turn number 2, I believe that is. It goes for a spin. Fortunately, it didn't hit the wall, but he's going to have to get back out on a outlap, and on a cooldown lap to have another attempt at it later on. We have also X-Nuke, who just started a flying lap of his own, but for the time being we are going to follow Hydrodan, as the McLaren is currently in P3 in the championship. He got himself a P4 at Albert Park, then didn't show up for Bahrain, got P2 at China, didn't show up for Azerbaijan, P2 at Spain, DNF at Monaco, and 5th place at Canada. So his worst finishing position has been 5th place, despite not scoring any points in 3 out of the first 7 rounds of the championship. He's done well enough to get P3 in the championship so far. So let's see if he continues at that form. Let's see what he does, as Delta is going very slowly. Delta is on an in-lap at the moment. Let's see what Hydrodan does. Going to get himself through the last corner. He's going to start derating a little bit. He's actually in mode number 3 of ERS through there. Yes, he's starting derating nonetheless. Going to cross over the line. P2 for Hydrodan. Great lap. A 131.9. First out of, not first out of the medium runners, but is the only driver apart from Colin to breach the 131s. So very nicely done from Hydrodan. Going to look further down at Vanez, who's currently in 6th place with a 32.3 on the set of hards. He's currently on his in lap. We're going to take a look at X-Nuke. I was going to take a look at him. He just crossed over the line to set a 133.0. Gets himself in P13. Beefs is also in the 3rd sector. He's not improving. He's 0.07 of a second slower than his previous best. He gets a bit wide through there. Not sure if the game is going to give him a slap on the wrist. His Valo is on an outlap at the moment. So we have the Finn of the Mercedes, or the McLaren rather, also on an outlap. And Beefs is going to cross over the line. P2! The times keep on dropping. Beefs gets himself P2. And look at that. Exactly 27 thousandths of a second separating the racing point from the McLaren driver. We have a bunch of drivers in the pits at this point. We have Nuke, who's on a cooldown lap, I suppose. Yes, he is. We have Valo pushing a bit more. Maybe he got his first lap nullified. He's improving by 8 tenths. So Valo is going to try another approach to it, I guess, or going for another run at it. Yeah, most of the drivers have gotten back into the pits. Mr. Mouse has left the session, so maybe he just got lost this connection. Hopefully he can rejoin us. Hopefully the Dutch driver of the Red Bull is going to be able to get back and join us this afternoon. Let's see how it goes. In the meantime, we have Valo getting himself through the flat out turn number 10. Let's see how he navigates this 3rd sector. Getting himself very tricky zone as well. Colin is already out of the pits. We have Keyboard Magnuson, Tyser, and ALG14 also on outlaps. Let's see what Valo does. Down to mode number 3 of ERS. Gets a bit wide to there. He's actually going to nullify his lap. He's going to get himself back into the pits. So at the moment, I just want to figure out who is the driver that's the quickest out of the pits. As we have Keyboard Magnuson, then Tyser, then ALG14 and Colin. So that's the order with which they are going to start their flying lap, so we can follow them later on, as we are currently with a keyboard Magnussen. And yeah, as I was saying, he did get a P3 at Canada, but he did not get the greatest start of the season. He didn't show up for the race at Albert Park, got P6 at Bahrain, P7 at China, P9 at China, P9 at Azerbaijan, then back to the top 5 with, or his first top 5 of the season with a 4th place at Spain, then 6th place at Monaco and a P3 at Canada. So he's in a bit of an improvement in form. Hopefully he could get himself a good result today. Currently not the greatest for him, only 14th place. So let's see how that one goes. Tyser has also started his flying lap. The Hungarian driver hasn't gotten any podiums. He's only gotten into the top 5 once. The Ferrari driver, who's currently in last place in this qualifying session, has only gotten one time in the top 5. That was at Monaco with a 4th place finish, 7th place at Albert Park, DNF at Bahrain, 7th at China, 6th at Azerbaijan, 10th at Spain, and closed out with a 12th place at Canada. So his first race that he finished without scoring points, because of course he also did not score points at Bahrain, but that was because of a crash, I suppose. It was a DNF. So unfortunately Tyser hasn't had the smoothest of seasons. Hopefully he can improve his fortune starting today. They're going to get Magnussen through the last couple of corners. You have yellow flags in sector 1 for some reason. Not sure what it's all about, but nonetheless Magnussen is going to get himself to the line. He's already derating. DRS wide open at the back of his Renault, going to cross over the line. P6 for the Renault driver with a 132.2. Let's see how it goes for him, as we have Tyser who's going to get himself through the last corners as well. Can he improve on that 133.3? Let's find out. DRS wide open. He's not derating. He's going to cross over the line. P13, 132.6. He does improve, but not enough. Mr. Mouse going to get himself through the line as well. He's already derating nonetheless. P3. Sorry, it wasn't Mr. Mouse, it was ALG 14. P3 on the mediums with a 131.8. Brilliant lap from him. And Colin has also started a flying lap. He's about to finish it. Let's see what he does. Going to get himself through the line, and it's going to be... Is he going to be a new pole? No, it's not. 9/10 slower than previously, so he's going to maintain his 130.7. Going to jump now to Delta, who's currently on a flying lap of his own. We're actually going to go through the grid. We have Elemental. Elemental is about to finish his lap. Elemental was currently 16th in the championship. He only scored points in 2 occasions, in a 5th place at Azerbaijan and 6th place at Spain. Hasn't scored any points before or since. Nonetheless, an alpha second improvement sees him climb up to a P3. Very close between him and the Red Bull driver. Gets himself a 131.8. Mr. Mouse is out of the session, and Rat as well. Maybe a collision between the two, I have no idea, but perhaps a collision between the two of them. Valu is on a flying lap at this point. We have Delta, who must be, yes, he's also in the second sector. We have Brett in the second sector. Something has gone terribly wrong with his race, or with his attempt. Venice is also out of the session. Slash is going to get himself. Tyser improves to a 9th place. And really trying to figure out what car is where at this point. We have Nuke through the last sector. He is improving by 3/10 at this point. We're going to follow the Haas driver. Let's see what he does. A 3/10 improvement would get him only 14th place. Let's see how it goes. Beefs gets through the line, a 131.4. Best case scenario, maintains that P2. Hydroden P3. And Valu gets himself P2, a 131.3, gets himself a spot on the front row, at least provisorily. Let's see how it goes now for a Nuke, who's going to get himself through the line. Is he going to improve? And he does. 3/10, nonetheless, not close enough to go up in the standings. Delta also retires from the session. He's going to get P7 in the best case scenario. Brett is coming into the pits. Slash is coming into the pits as well. So this is going to be it for our qualifying session, as it is going to be Colin taking a pole. I'm actually going to take a look. Colin is going to start the race on a set of softs. He's going to be the only one starting on the softs. Valu in P2 on mediums, then Beefs, Hydroden, Elemental, ALG 14, then Delta also on the softs. So both Toro Rosso drivers starting on the softs. this could really backfire on them. I have seen today, in this morning, I have had someone pit at lap 4 for softs, or sorry, start on softs, pit at lap 4 for mediums, and take them for 23 laps or whatever it was. It was over 20 laps to get P2. He got P2 at the end, but yeah, it would be a big stretch to go on softs to mediums. Softs to hards are a possibility, but I would say that the most optimal strategy would be mediums to hards or hards to mediums. As we have Colin on the softs on pole, followed by Valu with best of the medium runners. We have Beefs in P3, Hydroden in P4, Elemental in P5, ALG14 in P6, Delta in P7, also just like his teammate on the softs, as the Ferrari of the Brat is the best out of the hard runners with a P8. I couldn't quite catch the other drivers closing in the top 10. Now, going to get ourselves through the loading procedure, and it looks like it's not going to rain, at least for the time being. And I'm going to take a look at my data, and yes, those who start on the softs, they could pit at laps 8 or 9 to go for the hards, take them to the ends. Those who start on the mediums, I expect them to pit at lap 13 to take hards to the end, and those who start on the hards, I expect them to be pitting at about lap 17, 18, 19, depending or if they want to go on a set of mediums or if they want to take a set of softs to the end. If they want to take a set of softs, of course, they need to extend the hard stints a bit longer, even though they get at the risk of being massively undercut by those who start on the mediums and of course have a big period where they are on brand new hards, while the ones that started on the hards are on a much more worn out set of worn or hard Pirelli tires. When we take our datas and taking a look at the tire choices below the top 10, it's, well, it can't be a split because there's 5 cars below the top 10, but we've had 2 cars go for the medium start, other 3 going for the hard compound start. So overall we have 4 drivers starting on the hards, 2 on the softs, and the remaining 11, I believe this is, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I can't do math, I apologize. It is 9 people on the mediums. Okay, so just getting ourselves through the formation lap. Colin, who, taking a look at his performances, he got a P13 at Australia, did not show up for Bahrain, P4 at China, P7 at Azerbaijan, didn't show up for Spain, DNF at Monaco, and P9 at Canada. He's going to have a compromised strategy. Let's see how it makes it work, if he does at all. Valu is still looking for his first podium. He has finished P4 for 2 times, and in other 2 times he finished P5. Only the other 2 he finished outside of the top 5, still scoring points though. But Valu is currently 5th in the championship and he is the best out of the medium starters, so if he gets himself out of trouble, he could very well come out of here with a podium paying performance. We have our championship leader, we have Venice, who didn't have the qualifying session go smoothly. He's going to start from P11. He didn't show up for the first 3 races of the season. Then at his debut got P2 at Azerbaijan, winning Spain, following that winning Monaco, and a bit of a drop in form with the P6 at Canada. Let's see what he does here today at Paul Ricard. We have X-Nuke getting himself on the last spot of the grid. He was occupying the 6th place in the championship with the podium at China. There you have it. Now we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 red lights. Lights out, and away we go for the French Grand Prix. A slow start there from Hydro, then he might get pressurized by not Algia, but ALG14. Let's see, it's a bit of chaos. Valu gets and skate through it. Biffs in P3, Hydro then P4, Elemental L, ALG14 are banging wheels. There's a collision back there between Slash and Nuke. Rat also drops to P13. There are yellow flags deployed. There's a bit of chaos. We have Elemental right on the back of Hydroden. He's going to take himself at the inside, forces the McLaren a bit wide. There could have been a warning for the McLaren, even though there was nothing he could have done. Elemental just came across the track, so he should have slowed much more if he wanted to take that tight of an approach to turn number 5. Nonetheless, there was no contacts to be seen. ALG14 is going to have a run potentially at the top 5. No, he's not. Elemental is going to challenge Hydra Dando, and he does around the outside of turn number 8. Beautiful maneuver from the Alfa Romeo driver, moves himself up to a P4. Hydroden, or sorry, not Hydroden, but Biffs is going to challenge Valu into turn number 10. Looks like it's just a bit of my eyes playing tricks on me as the Elemental gets collected by Mr. Mouse, and Mr. Mouse is out of the session. Mr. Mouse is out of the race. Terminal damage for the Red Bull driver as Elemental loses the rear, out of control, comes back on the track. Most of the drivers were able to avoid him, but not the Dutch driver of the Red Bull, and unfortunately, race over for him. Venice, in all this chaos, has moved up to P7 after starting the race in P11. Rat is going to the pits for, I guess, replacement of front wing, as Valu is going to challenge Colin, or actually not, it is the Delta that's trolling me. That's certainly not yet, that's more like it. 3/10 from P1 to P2 and also from P2 to P3. ALG14 moves up to P4, Hydra then P5. Keyboard Magnussen didn't have the greatest of qualifyings, but both Magnussen and Venice moving a lot of places from the start. And Venice, the Portuguese, ooh, there's contact between the Portuguese and the Finn. Ooh, Venice managing to keep control of his car. Nonetheless, a bit of a naughty maneuver there from the Renault driver. The Brat isn't too far behind, especially with that argy-bargy there. Is going to allow himself to close in a little bit. The other Ferrari of Tyser, also not having the greatest of qualifyings, is up to P9. Delta didn't have the greatest of starts, went from P7, I believe, down to P10 early on the race. Elemental trying to recover after his spin, of course, not of course, but fortunately he didn't get damage on his front wing after that collision with Mr. Mouse. He wasn't really at fault for that one, but it's just a reality of racing in general. Sometimes you just, there was no one at fault on that one. I don't know if Elemental spin was caused by contact, but at least the contact between Elemental and Mr. Mouse is no one's fault. The car of Elemental is just out of control. Elemental is a passenger at that point, and he just collected Mr. Mouse. Nothing the Red Bull driver could have done also to avoid that one. In the meantime, we have Hydroden, who goes himself into the pits to get rid of his set of tires, potentially even replace front wing to get rid of some damage. Some of the drivers move up a few places, like Delta, for example. Also, the Ferrari is moving up one place, respectively. Venice is going to be able to challenge for the top 5. The other guys in the top 5 have spread out. Most of them are over a second away from each other. Only ALG14, the Spaniard, is 8/10 away from P3. Let's see how it goes, as the Portuguese is very close to the Finn as they come out of the slightly uphill turn 6 and turn 7. The RS is going to be wide open. Mode number 2 of the RS is moving up to mode 3. He's going to get himself the slipstream, going to get the RS. Not much Keyboard Magnussen can do. He's going to bring himself down to mode 1 of ERS, and Venice gets a bit deep into turn 9. That's going to get a better run on Keyboard Magnussen as he straightens out much more the exit out of turn number 9. Let's see how it goes. Up to the gears, mode number 4 of ERS. He's not going to get to DRS, but he's going to get the slipstream. Ooh, a bit of a lift off actually. He's going to mount the curb to get himself on the inside of the Portuguese. Let's see how it goes. Yes, the inside line into turn 11. There's contact between the front tire of the Renault and the rear tire of the Alfa Romeo, and the Portuguese manages to get away with it. Up to P5 he is. The Brat has managed to severely close in on those two, and we are going now to jump to the Spaniard. ALG14 is really pressurizing Beefs. The Racing Point driver is not as comfortable on that set of mediums as his competition is, at least in the top 5, and ALG might have a big chance at making some positions, at least coming out of turn number 7. Looking once again back at the Brat, is close or closer to Magnussen, but not close enough. Tyser is still looking from afar, 2.5 seconds away from his teammate, as Biffs is forced into a mistake. Biffs gets himself a 3-second time penalty very early on this Grand Prix. Very unfortunate from him. Colin at least is doing well to keep himself away. He started on the soft, he's 2 seconds away from Valu, so at least that part he is managing to do. He kept himself out of trouble, now he just has to take advantage of the fact that he started on the softer tire. He needs to pull away from his rivals, especially if his rivals keep on battling out. The Spaniard of the Red Bull isn't quite able to pull any maneuvers. Keyboard Magnussen loses out, perhaps loses out on the right to DRS. That gives a license to the Brat to have a go at the Renault. There's a bit, ooh, that's a tank slapper and is in the wall. The Brat losing the rear, coming out of turn number 9, is reversing back onto the track. This can be very dangerous. Fortunately, he ghosted and Delta didn't have any issues coming or getting back through him. But Elemental also collects a position there, but the Brat very misfortunate. There's a bit of a bump at the exit of that corner, and that can't unsettle the car. It looks like he went full on the throttle, he put pedal to the floor. Coming out of the corner, Zalgia probably has contact with Biffs and spins. He's dropped down to P5, going to drop down to P6 possibly. Yes, he does. It's going to be side by side with Keyboard Magnussen. And now the Renault driver, instead of contesting with the Ferrari, he now has a Red Bull to contend with. Let's see, Algia, or not Algia, ALG14 is going to get himself DRS, is going to approach around the outside of turn number 1, and what a beautiful maneuver! What a maneuver there from the Spaniard, gets past the Finn around the outside of turn 1, which converts into the inside of turn number 2. Magnussen, there's nothing he could have done to get himself back on him. Brat is going to get himself into the pits to replace the front wing, obviously, as Biffs is going to breathe a sigh of relief. I don't know if there is contact between Biffs and ALG that's got him down to this position. Nonetheless, Keyboard Magnussen is going to have DRS at his disposal. The Spaniard of the Red Bull is too far away from the Portuguese to benefit from DRS or the drag reduction system, so at this point he might become a prey to the Renault as they are going to battle it out for the last of the top 5 positions. Looking at the remaining drivers of the pack, this is the 2 cars that are the closest to each other, as most of the other drivers are at least 1 second or higher apart. Slash in P12 is 1.1 seconds behind Rat, and those 2 are the closest cars on the track apart from the duo that you see on your monitor. So we are going to start lap number 6 for these guys. I believe Colin is about to start lap number 6. Yes, he is. He's leading with a 2-second advantage over Valu in P2. Of course, Valu's tires are going to start to come into their own as Collins are starting to reach that point where he's going to start struggling with them, especially on the slowest corners. So corners like turns 4, 5 and 6, and then also the chicane of turns number 8 and 9. That might be a bit of trouble for them as Brad overtakes Nuke for P13 as he comes out of the pits with fresher tires, and he's also displayed a higher level of pace. He's going to jump ourselves back. As you can see, Valu has already gained half a second since the beginning of the lap. Going to take a look at Keyboard Magnussen, who's lost out quite a bit. It's almost 7/10 the gap between the Finn and the Spaniard of the Red Bull. Nonetheless, he's going to be too far away to have any sort of overtaking attempt at the moment. It looks like he's not really pushing too hard from the car as well. He's on mode number 1 of ERS, even when he has DRS on his opponent, so just saving ERS, taking advantage of the fact that he has DRS to keep himself a higher top end speed while not using as much from the battery, so keeping his resources in check, even though it looks like he is not really on the same pace as the top 5 drivers, or at least most of them anyways for the time being. Slash has been catching up to a Rat as they are going to get themselves out of turn number 9. We have now the run into turn 10. It's the Mercedes versus the Williams. Looks like the Williams did get a better exit, and they are both on mode 0 of ERS actually, but yeah, the Mercedes not able to get a good enough exit to pressurize the Williams. Rat gets a bit sideways though, as he's on the hard tires as opposed to the mediums on the Mercedes, as we're going to jump to a Keyboard Magnussen, who's now 2/10 away from ALG, as the Spaniard has lost out quite a bit, maybe a bad third sector, and of course the Finn also got DRS over the Red Bull, and this might get exciting for the top 5 battle. Let's see how it goes. Coming out of turn 6, a bit lift off the throttle. They need to be smooth on the application, of course. the cars are much heavier as compared to qualifying, and also the tires are much more worn out. And Keyboard Magnussen is going to get DRS, is going to start closing in on ALG, despite not using much of his DRS, or his ERS rather. And as you can see, is very, very close to ALG at this point. Let's see who gets the better exit out of turn number 9. Looks like Keyboard Magnussen has a slight advantage, which is going to snowball as he gets closer and closer, and the slipstream effect is going to become stronger and stronger. He's going to get himself at the inside of turn number 10, and ALG has nothing to defend from him. He's actually dropping down to mode 0 of ERS, trying to conserve some of his resources, and is going to lose out massively. Drops down to a P5. Going to take a look at value as Slash finally overtook Rat for P11, but taking a look at the fin of the McLaren, you can see how much he's gained over the past few laps. Colin's tires are starting to really go down in terms of their pace. You can also see the other Toro Rosso Delta is getting closed in rapidly by Elemental. The gap is already 2 tenths. I'm actually going to check up on the Hungarian driver. Oh, Delta is going to the pits. Delta is the first driver that didn't get any sort of damage. He's the first driver to get himself into the pits. Let's see what tires he's going to get on his car. So I'm actually going to try to take a look at Value and Colin's battle as they come into turn number 7. It's going to be a set of hards for the Toro Rossos, who jump to Value on board with the fin. Is getting himself mode number 3 of ERS. DRS and the slipstream all together. Very close. You can look at the difference in top speed. Value, even before the braking zone, is already ahead. Not a chance from Colin to retaliate. We're also going to take a look at ALG, who's going to challenge the Renault into turn number 8 as well. And just like the battle for the lead, easy maneuver from the Spaniards to get himself up to a P5. Now we have Keyboard Magnussen. Is he going to have a good enough of a run? Doesn't look like it. And I wanted to take a look at who was it? Maybe it was Rat trying to come back at Slash, but looks like Rat isn't on the same pace. He has the hard tires, but and they are both with the same amount of laps on them. So it's those two got involved in an incident, I believe, early on the race, and they've been together ever since. Colin gets himself into the pits, going to get rid of his set of tires, and is going to get himself a set of not mediums, hards. I'm going to make an educated guess. Let's see how it goes. Oh, it's actually mediums. No, sorry, no, that was a visual glitch. It is hards for Colin. Let's see where he comes out of the pits at. And it looks like he's going to come out in P7. Is he going to come out ahead of Elemental? No, he does not. Elemental gets the jump on him, and Colin gets demoted to a P8. Jumping back to the battle that now becomes the battle for P4. Keyboard Magnussen getting a bit wide out of turn number 5. That's not going to help him get speed out of turn 6 and 7. And as you can see, the gap is already 8 tenths. He needs to get himself a bit higher ERS modes to claim some of the distance, I would say. He's going to mode number 2 of ERS. He does have higher top speed because of the DRS, and is going to get himself 6 tenths away from the Spaniard of the Red Bull. ALG 14 is currently 7 tenths away. Looks like he also got a better exit than the Renault out of turn number 9, so he's going to extend this gap just a little bit all the way up into the braking zone of turn 11, which is also quite a tricky one. And I would say at this point it's where the differences in driving styles are going to start taking effects. Those who are the smoothest drivers are going to have the tires with a bit more of life in them than their competitors, who also started on the mediums but are a bit harsher in terms of the way they use the rubber of those Pirellis. We are going to start lap number 10. The skies are getting a bit threatening. I don't know if rain is supposed to happen at the end of the Grand Prix, but the skies have gotten darker since the start of the Grand Prix. As you guys can see, we have Colin pressurizing Elemental coming out of the last corner. He's going to get the ERS, he's going to get slipstream mode number 4 of ERS as well. He's going to pulverize the Hungarian. Will Elemental try to answer? No, he's not. He's too far away by the time they reach the braking zone, and Colin, having an easy maneuver with the aid of DRS and ERS as well, moves up to P7. Now he has to take advantage of the freshness of his tires. Despite being harder, he needs to take advantage of the freshness of his tires to make a move. Going to jump once again to Keyboard Magnussen, who's hunting down ALG is of course too far away to pull off any maneuver at this point, but still is maintaining himself on a DRS range. And even if he doesn't battle, even if he doesn't get up to ALG, at least for now, he could very well just keep himself in the DRS and the slipstream, and that way allow himself to not lose too much time to his rivals, especially those who are undercutting him, and then he would be able to not lose the time and also get DRS where most of his rivals probably aren't going to be doing so. And if you get the higher top speed given by the DRS, that's what, 1/10, 2/10, and over a few laps it starts getting a considerable amount of time. And that's exactly the plan of Keyboard Magnussen, I would say, unless an opportunity presents to him, and then he's not going to say no to that. But I don't think he's looking to battle too much for the time being. In the meantime, the Brat, after his mistake, he came out of the pits, 5 laps old mediums. He is coming up to /LP. In the previous lap, he overtook Rat, who's now in P12, and is already pulled a 1.5 second gap. In the meantime, a bit of a development in the top 3. The Portuguese of the Alfa Romeo has started to close in on the Racing Points driver. Biffs, the Dane, is going to start feeling the pressure, I believe. Actually, let me confirm, yes, he is Danish. Biffs is a Dane, and is going to get very pressurized by Venice. Oh, a bit of a tank slapper from the Racing Point. These tires are starting to fail a little bit on them, and Venice is going to have a massive run all the way up to turn number 11 as they get up to turn 10. And yes, of course, getting a compromised exit out of turn 9 really limits your lap time, or at least your top end speed, because you are losing speed all the way until the braking zone of turn 11. You can see how much he closed in. /LP gets overtaken by the Brat as well. Keyboard Magnussen, with a mistake somewhere along the way, dropped down, and the gap is 1.7 seconds. Biffs is getting to the pits. Venice is going to still get DRS, I believe, and is going to have DRS for at least the start of lap number 12. The gap, I would like to take a look at it. I can't quite tell. It's 2.9 seconds between Venice and Biffs. Keyboard Magnussen is also going to the pits. Biffs is going for a set of the hard tires. Keyboard Magnussen is doing the same. Tyser claims P4 out of his rivals, undercutting him, going to the pits earlier. And Colin also gets himself the places. Of course, he was leading the race when he pitted. He lost a bit of time in the last 2 laps of his stint, because of course those soft tires really degrade quickly. And nonetheless, after the rivals who started on the medium start pitting, Colin is going to get back the lead. At least I would hope so, that once Tyser, ALG, Venice and Valu pit, Colin will be able to get back the lead. Nonetheless, he's going to have older tires, so that might be a very big difference. In the meantime, Elemental also gets himself into the pits. He's going to come out of the pits in P12 ahead of Delta, who has 5 tires old, or 5 laps older tires. Both of them are on the white marked Pirelli tires. Delta is very close to the back of that Alfa Romeo. Fortunately for him, not close enough to create any damage. I apologize for that. He's going to get Delta. Of course, his tires are already warmed up. Elemental's tires are still cold. Delta is going to get... there was a lag moment. Not sure who lagged there. Hopefully there wasn't damage. I'm going to try to see if there's any damage on the front wing of any of them. There's no front wing damage, fortunately. Valu gets himself to the pits, gets a 5-second penalty for exceeding the speed limit entering the pits. ALG does not pit, so it's Tyser and Valu who are going to come into the pits. I'm going to be interested in seeing if Colin overtakes the McLaren and the Ferrari while they are getting serviced by their pit crew. Colin already jumped Tyser. Is he going to jump Valu? Let's take a look. It's going to be very close between both of them, and Colin does not jump to McLaren. So it's going to be very close, and of course it's going to be a battle in the laps to come. Keyboard Magnussen gets past Tyser, Hydrodan as well, the Brat as well. Of course, Tyser is going to have much fresher tires. Hydrodan and the Brat will have to pit. /LP will also have to pit soon. But as I want to see the battle for P3, X-Nuke gets a 5-second penalty for speeding in the pit lane as well. Very unfortunate stuff from him, and he has retired from the session. He went into the pits and retired from the session right there. So really did not go to plan. His race got involved in a first lap collision, and Valu actually extends a bit from Colin. Of course, he's going to take advantage of the fact that his tires are 4 laps fresher, and he is going to get himself a bit of a gap formed, and he might be contending for the win. Of course, not sure about the pace of Venez and ALG once they are all on the hard tires, but Colin and Valu might be battling for the win, and if they start battling too much, Venez and ALG might get involved in it. Let's see how it goes as the Portuguese gets himself into the pits now to get rid of his tires. Of course, Colin and Valu are going on undercuts. Let's see if the Spaniard... the Spaniard is actually not going to pit. He's going to extend his tires, or extend his stint for a while longer. Venez gets a set of hard tires on his Alfa Romeo. Let's see how it goes. Valu is going to jump him or not? Let's find out. Venez is coming out of the pits. Yes, he's going to jump him. Colin also jumps him. And Beefs is going to get him as well. Yes, he does. Beefs, of course. He had a bit of trouble in the last lap, but he did get a 2-lap undercut on most of his rivals. He comes out behind Colin and Valu, so just where he was when he pitted, of course. Well, not exactly when he pitted, because Colin pitted much earlier than all the other drivers on the mediums, but Colin was leading the race before everyone pitted, so it would be net P1 for Valu, net P2 for Colin, net P3 for Beefs. That's exactly where he was before everyone pitted. Venez might have something to say about that though. He's going to get the RS, he's going to get the slipstream. He's not going to try to overtake just yet. He's going to force Beefs to use a bit more of ERS to keep himself ahead. Venez brings himself down to mode 0 of ERS actually. Hydroden and the Brat are coming to blows, and the Ferrari overtakes the McLaren even before the braking zone. Easy maneuver for the Ferrari, and the Brat moves himself up to a P7. Does the Dutchman. Hydroden is brought down another place. The British driver is currently P3 in the championship and is not having the greatest of races so far. It's actually his worst. If the race finished right now, it would be his worst finishing position so far this season. So it would be the first time he finishes a race outside of the top 5. Venez continues applying tremendous pressure on Beefs, who has already lost contact to Colin and Valu in terms of the DRS range. He's 2 seconds away from those two up top. Let's see how it goes. Will the Portuguese have a go at it? No! He's not going to have a go at it. He continues to pile up the pressure on the Dane. I believe Colin has a 3-second time penalty already. Slash goes himself into the pits, going to get himself a new set of tires, possibly a new set of mediums to take to the end. Let's see how that one develops though. ALG is going once again for another lap. He's getting massively undercut. I'm not sure what he's looking for. Is he looking to go medium soft? If he's going to go medium soft, I swear to God, he is a legend. This man is an absolute legend if he goes mediums up to lap 20 and then pits for soft. So of course Valu and company are going to be gaining a tremendous amount of time. Venez is not overtaking Beefs just yet. Keyboard Magnussen gets jumped by Brett. Brett has 10-lap old tires and still got enough traction to get away with the overtaking maneuver there, unless Keyboard Magnussen has damage. Going to try to take a look. This very cool camera angle as well, but no damage from them. And Keyboard Magnussen is going to keep himself in P7 for the time being. Going to jump once again to the battle for P4. Venez once again very close to the Dane of the Racing Point. Let's see how it goes. Beefs got himself a 2nd place in the season opener, but hasn't gotten himself in the top 5 ever since, and is having a great chance to do so today. Venez going to finally pull the trigger on him and is going to move up to P4. 2 seconds away from the 2 cars ahead. So Venez might have taken a bit too long to get away from Beefs. Of course, Venez does have a less battery charge than the Dane to manage, so Beefs does get a bit of an advantage at this point, despite having older tires. 2 laps older tires at this point. He's going to mode 0 of ERS. He's actually going to get the slipstream, going to close in quite a bit. As you can see, the closing speed even with mode 0 of ERS is really big. And Colin, 6 lengths away from Valdo, is too far away to get himself going just yet. Taking a look at Keyboard Magnussen, oh, Slash gets a penalty to his name, but Keyboard Magnussen, despite having about 3 times less laps done on his tires compared to the Ferrari is pulling away from him. Is there any engine issues for Keyboard Magnussen? It sounds like the car is going very slowly. Biffs gets a penalty. That's rather unfortunate. He's pushing, trying to catch up or to keep up with Venez, but he's already out of DRS range, or at least close to it, and he got a 3-second time penalty. So very unfortunate from him. And we have Colin, who is getting the arrest from Valdo. Venez is not getting so just yet, but Venez is showing better pace, despite Colin and Valdo not necessarily being battling wheel to wheel and therefore losing time because they are battling each other so closely. Venez is still lapping quicker than them, so this could be very exciting indeed. Valdo's gap to ALG has dropped down below 11 seconds, so it's going to be a risky tactic from the Red Bull driver. Brett is getting himself into the pits, going to do 10 laps on that set of softs. I mean, after 6 laps, those softs are going to be struggling quite a bit for traction, but of course the car is also much lighter at this point of the race, so I would say the tires will function nicely until lap 8. I would give the benefit of the doubt on that end, because the car is lighter now due to the fuel these drivers have been using throughout the entire race. Venez 1.3 seconds away from Colin, as Colin is still trying to hunt down Valdo. And oh, we have yellow flags. Is it Elemental? Elemental got overtaken by Delta and is spun coming out of turn number 6. What a mistake from the Hungarian driver, and is not going to get himself much better in the season. And yeah, he's really compromising himself. Any chance of getting points, I think any chance of points is now out of the cards for the Hungarian. Very unfortunate stuff. Second spin of the race from him, and he was actually doing very well at the start before having a spin. Then he had contact with Mr. Mouse as a result of that spin, resulting in the DNF of the Red Bull driver. Fortunately for him, no damage resulting of that DNF, but yeah, just not a good day at the office for the Alfa Romeo driver. Surely is not a happy camper at these points. Going to take a look at Colin, as he's still pressurizing Valdo. This could be, if he overtakes Valdo, this could be net P1 at the end of the Grand Prix. Colin has saved quite a lot of ERS. He has much more ERS available to him than the Finn. The Finn uses modes 3 of ERS, because of course Colin, despite using modes 2, does have the DRS and the slipstream, so he gets closer to Valdo nonetheless, and Valdo is forced to use more and more ERS. So Colin is doing a great job at putting the squeeze on the resources of Valdo, forcing him to drain his resources by himself, and then Colin, I imagine, is going to pull the trigger on him in the last few laps of this Grand Prix. He has the ERS to burn once push comes to shove. Venez is from the outside looking in. He isn't quite able to get himself within a second to get involved in all of this, and Alge is finally going to the pits. Ooh, yeah, he got very close to the wall there. Did he touch the wall? I'm not sure. Probably not, because the autopilot has already kicked in by that point. He doesn't have front wing damage. He's going to switch for a set of softs. Very bold strategy from Alge. Is going to get himself 8 laps on that set of softs. He's going to take them to the end. He's already dropped down to P5. Going to drop down to P6. Potentially, not sure. Going to take a look at Keyboard Magnussen. Ooh, there's Keyboard Magnussen and Hydrodan. It's going to be very close between them. Keyboard Magnussen does overtake. Hydrodan really overtake. It's close, but not close enough. And Alge, or ALG, is going to get himself to P6. He does have brand new soft tires, so he's at least going to look for the fastest lap point, as Venez has finally gotten himself within a second of Colin. He's starting to push a little bit more. Maybe in the past few laps he's just saving ERS, especially taking advantage of the fact that Biffs isn't quite on the same pace as the Portuguese. And now Venez is going to try severely to push to claim a position. Colin didn't have the greatest first sector in this lap, as Keyboard Magnussen gets overtaken by ALG out of the DRS zone of turn 7 into turn number 8, so easy peasy lemon squeezy for the Spaniard, who now has a 9-second gap to Biffs. Of course, Biffs has penalties to his name. I'm actually going to take a look real quick to the penalties. Valu has a 5-second time penalty. I forgot about that one. Valu has a 5-second time penalty. Colin, to take the win, doesn't even need to force himself an overtake. Biffs does have a penalty. Biffs has 2 penalties, so Valu only needs to gain 3 seconds on him to overtake him at the end of the race, and I'm pretty sure he's going to do that very nicely. And yeah, I'm going to take a look at Colin. Is really doesn't need to push. I'm going to take the gap to the leader, and as you can see, Biffs at this point, he wouldn't get enough time to overtake Valu because he has penalties of his own. But Algia, if Algia overtakes Biffs on track, Algia could get himself P3 at the end of the race, with Colin P1 and Venez P2. Venez with a mistake somewhere along the way. The gap has dropped down to 2 seconds. 2.1 seconds is the gap between the Portuguese and the top 2 at this point. And taking a look at the fastest lap from everyone, it's the Brat who has the fastest lap so far of the race. Taking at the interval 1.5 seconds is the gap. Algia already gotten 3 seconds. Algia got in a lap 3 seconds to Biffs. Is going to really be pushing. He doesn't have the DRS to necessarily go flying lap mode. Nonetheless, he's going to be having a tremendously good time challenging for those podium positions. Hydroden is surely going to, actually he doesn't have to pit. He can take 7 laps on that set of hards. Of course, they aren't going to be as effective as the 8-lap old tires on Keyboard Magnussen's Renault. Ooh, there's a mistake from the Brat, possibly? Yes, the Brat has another mistake at the exact same spot as before. And let's see, did he get damage? This time, fortunately for him, he avoided damage, but Rat and Tyser get promoted a few places. The Brat getting for the 2nd time in this Grand Prix a mistake at the exact same spot. Going to jump to Colin, who looks like he has lost out to Valu. He has about 80% of ERS available to him. Valu has over 60, so the gap isn't as big anymore between Colin's and Valu's battery charge. And ooh, gets a 3-second time penalty, does the Spaniard, as he gets wide coming out of turn number 2. And it is very nice. Well, I mean, it's nice to see that Algia is, or ALG, I keep on messing up his name, I apologize, I'm getting used to it still. ALG, it's nice to see that he's going for it, he's pushing, but unfortunately, not the greatest of disciplines under display, and he gets himself out of, not out of contention, but gets himself a 3-second time penalty, which is certainly going to make his life a bit harder. Hydroden is actually going to get a run on Keyboard Magnussen, who's going to try to defend around the outside of turn number 9. Let's see how it goes. They are still side by side. He actually puts the traction down over the curb. That was risky. Nonetheless, he keeps himself on the track. Of course, not as much traction over the curb, so Hydroden does get a better run. Now it's the Renault with the slipstream. Hydroden is going to cover the inside into turn 11. He's going to have the centrifugal force and the inertia push his car to the outside of the corner on the exit. Keyboard Magnussen wasn't close enough to capitalize on that though. Colin's pace has severely dropped. He's 2 seconds away from Valu. Not sure what happened there, and Venez is going to start having the RS and the slipstream. Might be the fact that Colin has 13-lap old tires compared to the 9 laps on Valu's car and the 8 laps on Venez's car. So at this point, if Venez overtakes Colin, Venez will take the win. Biffs takes another penalty. But at this point, Venez only needs to overtake Colin to take the win, unless Venez, of course, gets penalties, which I haven't seen so far. But yes, Valu has a 5-second penalty for exceeding the pit limit speed. So Valu needs to really up his pace. Venez is going to start closing in on Colin. Colin has a lot of ERS to defend, so not really making the life easier to the Alfa Romeo driver. Going to jump once again to Keyboard Magnussen, who's going to potentially have a go at Hydroden. He's actually not going on the offensive. He keeps himself on mode 2 of ERS. Hydroden also on mode 2, but he has much less battery charge. nonetheless, he's really not going on the offensive at this point of the race. The Spaniard of the Red Bull getting himself 2 seconds away from Beefs at this point with 5 laps to go, and tracking the gap to the lead. It is a 10-second gap, yes, so at this point it would be 5 because of the penalty of Valu, but then converted into 8 seconds because of Algia getting a 3-second time penalty of his own. So he's 8 seconds away from the leader. If the race finished at the moment, he would only get P4. If he gets a bit closer, he might still get P3 and Valu gets pushed down to P4, but at this point Valu, despite getting the 5-second penalty, only drops down to P3, worst case scenario. Vanez is very close to Colin at this point. You can see 2:10 separating the two of them, and Colin needs to hurry up if he wants to keep up with Valu, but he has to look at his mirrors because Vanez isn't too far behind. Here we have the Portuguese going to pressurize the Dane. He's going to get a better exit. Mode number 2 of ERS, slipstream on the back of his Alfa Romeo. Colin is actually going to let himself go in mode 2, even mode 0 of ERS going to let Vanez pull to the racing line before the braking zone. Does not want to lose much time battling for position as Rat gets himself a new fastest lap of the Grand Prix, and since he's outside of the top 10, no one gets the point of the fastest lap unless someone gets another fastest lap within the top 10 until the end of the Grand Prix. ALG gets himself past the other Dane of Beefs, so Beefs and Colin, the Dane drivers, are demoted a place each. Beefs is going to try to keep up with ALG, but of course those soft tires have unbeatable pace, and Colin is going to try to keep up with the Portuguese. He's already 8/10 behind, and he's really going to try. He needs to push because he has the battery to do so, but Vanez looks like he's just quicker. And I'm going to actually take a look at the race director real quick. I want to take a look at the pace of Valu, and Valu has 2 warnings, another warning, and he is done. But Valu has got the fastest lap of 1:34.8, a fastest personal lap, but he's currently lapping on low 1:35s since lap 21. He was on the mid to highs 35s, now he's in the mid to low 35s. He just got his personal best first sector. And going to take a look at Vanez laps. He got held up by the Toro Rosso in the previous lap, but he's sort of at the same pace. He's sort of at the same pace. So let's see how that one develops. As taking a look at the order, no one is too close to each other apart from Keyboard Magnussen close to Hydroden. He's not going on the offensive once again. Going to keep his distance in mode number 2 of ERS. Elemental gets a 3-second time penalty, so a bad day gets worse for the Hungarian driver. And Beefs keeps himself to DRS and the slipstream on ALG, but is not close enough to pull an overtaking attempt just yet. Colin has lost the rights to DRS on the Portuguese driver of the Alfa Romeo, and Vanez is 2.5 seconds away from Valu. At this point, Valu is going to lose the first 2 places, and Vanez would take the win. Colin gets P2 and Valu P3. You're going to take a look at the leader gap once again. ALG 9.7 tenths. He needs to get at least 2 seconds to get P3 at the end of this Grand Prix. He did go for a risky strategy. I'm pretty sure it was fun for him to have that initial couple laps on the opening laps of the stint on that softs. I'm pretty sure that was fun, but in terms of the pure strategy, maybe he should have gotten just on the standard medium to hard and take it to the end. Of course, he was trying to make it work because, of course, the soft tires are much more competitive than the mediums, but he also degrade much quicker, and the time he lost while being on those worn out hards, on worn out mediums, while his competitors were on much fresher hards, his lap times on these brand new softs aren't enough to get it back. Colin dropping out quite a bit of pace. He's really struggling on those laps, on those tires with 16 laps old hards. And going to take a look at the gap to the leader. 4.9 seconds. He could actually not get Valu at the end of the race. he could not get value at the end of the race. It's going to be rather interesting to see how it goes until the end of the Grand Prix. Venice is for sure in the clear. He doesn't even need to push, he just needs to not get penalties, and he's going to be able to get himself up to P1 at the end of the race, getting himself his third win out of his initial 5 races of the season. He would get his third win out of the last 4 races and continue as extending the championship lead that he currently nurses, especially as Rat, who is in between the championship, or sorry, Hydrodan, who's currently in between the championship, is down in P6, and Rat, who is P3 with 55 points, is not scoring any points today. So it's going to be a very good opportunity for the Portuguese driver for sure. He didn't get the greatest of qualifying performances. By the way, let's take a look at the changes, the position changes. You can see Venice started P11. Oh, Rat has a moment. Not sure what happened to him, but Rat had a moment that brought out the yellow flags. The yellow flags have been lifted in the meantime though. But as you can see, Venice is certainly the driver of the day. Venice qualified in P11, got brand new choice of tires, went mediums to hards, got himself out of trouble, kept himself on a very quick pace. Not enough to get Valu at the end on track, even though he's probably not pushing too hard, even though Valu has the weapons to defend himself. Even if he didn't have the 5-second penalty, he would be able to defend from Venice if the circumstances were the same at this point of the race. But unfortunately for the Finn, he did a mistake entering the pits, exceeded the speed limit, and got himself slapped with a 5-second penalty. Now Venice is actually closing in on Valu, as Valu is on 1 lap older tires than Venice and 4 laps younger tires than Colin. But going to take a look at the leader thing. Colin is already out. Colin is already out of a contention for P2. He needs to gain about 1 second on the Finn to get himself up to P2 at the end of the race. Beefs gets another penalty. Hydra then might get himself P5, and Keyboard Magnussen could get himself P6 at the end of this race. But let's see how it goes, as Valu still has Venice to contend with. Venice is going to be pushing, is really depleting his battery charge, as we are currently on the last lap of this Grand Prix. Valu has a bit more of ERS to use. We can be a bit more aggressive on it. Colin is definitely out of the possibility to get past Valu at the end of this Grand Prix. And Keyboard Magnussen is not going to pull the trigger. He does get to the DRS, gets mode number 4 of ERS, is going to finally pull the trigger coming out of turn number 9, is maintaining mode 4 of ERS. Hydra then doesn't have as much ERS available, so Keyboard Magnussen does have advantage. He's going to get himself up through the gears. He's going to get the slipstream as he gets closer and closer. The slipstream is going to get stronger and stronger. He's actually going around the outside. He's going to switch it. Hydra then forces him to lift off as he moves to the inside after the corner. And beautifully done on that defending from Hydra then. Nonetheless, his teammate is going to cross the line in first place. But Venice is going to get himself, due to the penalties, crosses over the line to take the win of the French Grand Prix. Valu gets P2. Colin not close enough, gets P3. ALG claims P4. BFCS claims P5, at least for the time being. Hydroden, who gets very wide there, is going to get a penalty because of that one. He does not get a penalty, but he did got himself the advantage of going wide. Nonetheless, gets jumped. It looks like he had a penalty before that, and Hydroden gets demoted to P7. Beefs gets P6. Keyboard Magnussen gets P5 at the end of it. Tyser gets P8 for the Ferrari. His teammate is going to follow in P9 / completes the top 10, being the only point scorer today for the Mercedes. Delta, unfortunately for him, gets P11. Elemental retired at some point in the race, and it's going to be a Rat after a big mistake. He was in the points, but after a big mistake, he gets himself out of the Grand Prix and is going to lose certainly his third spot in the championship to Valu, I believe, at the end of the race. Let's see how it goes though. For the next race, we are going to have the updated standings, so we are going to have the confirmation next time around, but not time for that. This is now time for celebration, as there you have it, the Portuguese driver, 4th podium in the first 6 races, in the first 5 races, and third P1 in the last 4 races. So beautiful job from the Portuguese so far this season since his debut at Azerbaijan. He is alongside Valdo, who gets himself his first podium of the season. Finally, Valdo gets a podium. He wasn't able to get the win just yet, but he got his first podium of the season, which is also very good for him. Colin gets a P3. Colin, who also gets his first podium of the season, only his second top 5 finish of the season so far, is also going to get certainly a big boost in the standings, as we have ALG in 4th place. Gets himself a good sum of points as well. Keyboard Magnussen in P5, Biffs in P6, Hydroden P7, Tyson P8, the Brett P9, and Slash completes the top 10. So this is it for today, guys. Hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did, give me a like button. If you did not, the dislike button is, as always, right beside it. Subscribe if you'd like to see more. Hit the bell icon for any notifications of whenever we are about to start a live stream or to post a video. Hope to see you guys next time, and have a wonderful day. Goodbye.